Indian River Connections brings you the first source you can watch for truth on board decisions in Indian River County. The Board Report, where taxpayers and policymakers intersect. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to get notified when we go live on Fridays at 7 p.m. Visit IndianRiverConnections.com for more. Sponsored by Gus Curran's House of Champions.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Board Report brought to you by Indian River Connections. I'm Joann Binford, and today our guest contributor is Kelly Patricia O'Meara. She's an award-winning former investigative reporter for the Washington Times and Insight magazine, penning dozens of articles exposing the fraud of psychiatric diagnosis and the dangers of psychiatric drugs, including her groundbreaking 1999 cover story, Guns and Doses, exposing the link between psychiatric drugs and acts of senseless violence. What are we learning about the perpetrators of these school shootings? Are doctors and the medical industry contributing to the breakdown of these shooters? We don't know. There's so much to ask. We are going to dive into it with Kelly today, who has been working on this topic for decades. Thank you for joining us today. Please share and comment on the show today, and stick around as we take a short break to give a huge thanks to our sponsor, Gus Curran's House of Champions in Vero Beach, Florida. Their boxing gym fuels strength and community for everyone.
House of Champions, founded in 1996 right here in Vero Beach, Florida. Our Hall of Fame trainers will push you to your limits and beyond. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, we have the perfect class for you, including the one-of-a-kind rock-steady Parkinson's training. So come join the fight and unleash the champion inside you. Give them a call, 772-713-1157, or go to gchouseofchampions.com.
Welcome to Binford Chronicles. We are returning with Kelly O'Meara. Hi, Kelly. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Joann. Thank you for having me on. It's a great pleasure.
Yeah, well, Kelly, another shooting in our nation that has taken lives of innocent children and injured many people. And so many of us are like, what is happening? What is going on? Why is this happening?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, first of all, my heart goes out to the victims' families. It's always very difficult to see what they're going through. And it just breaks my heart every single time. And I've been covering this since 1999. When I wrote an article for the Washington Times Insight magazine called Guns and Doses. And what I did is I looked at it was right after Columbine, the shooting at Columbine in Colorado. And so I looked at 13 of the previous school shooters, including Columbine. And what I found was the only thing they really had in common wasn't what they were wearing. It wasn't their social status, their parents, social status, whatever. It was the fact that they had all had some sort of mental health treatment and psychiatric drugs. And so I thought, well, that's interesting. So I wrote the article. It was a huge, huge article for me. The response was unbelievable, to tell you the truth, because people wrote to us instantly and were like, oh, we're so glad you're talking about this. So from there on, I continued to write a lot of articles, like 24 articles about psychiatric drugs and the fraud of psychiatric diagnosing. And I don't know how much you want to get into this, but whenever I see these school shooters or any of the shooters, like the Manhattan shooter a couple weeks ago, the guy that went into and wanted to go to the NFL offices and he shot, some people on his way up. What you look at and what you want to hear right away, in my mind, because I've covered it for so long, is I want the police, the investigators, to tell me right away, was this person receiving any kind of mental health treatment, and had they been on any kind of prescription psychiatric drugs? And if they were, tell me that history, because that will tell you a lot about what happened to this person's mind. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Right.
These are not benign drugs. Everybody likes to think that, we talk about them, we laugh about them. People have jokes about them that, they take Zoloft or they're on Xanax. And whenever I want to sleep, I'll take a Xanax. These are very serious drugs. They are not to be taken lightly. And the possible serious life-threatening adverse events that are associated with them are real. And so if you have a young person, and unfortunately in today's world, we put kids on these drugs at a very young age, all the time, okay? Either if it's for ADHD, if it's for depression. In fact, I'm going to give you an interesting number. You're going to love this. And this is data. This is real data, okay, that was collected in 2020 by IQVIA, formerly IMS Health, okay? And so what they found out, and this is information that was provided by doctors, okay? So we had almost 77 million Americans take at least one psychiatric drug. 77 million Americans take at least one, okay? Some of them take a cocktail of them. So listen to this. Antidepressants, 0 to 1-year-olds. We have 7,811 0 to 1-year-olds taking an antidepressant.
Why? Why would they be taking an antidepressant at that age?
Exactly. You can't even diagnose depression in a 0 to 1-year-old, right?
Wow. Right. No. How can you?
So 2 to 3-year-olds, 12,137, 2 to 3-year-olds on an antidepressant. And it just gets worse as you go down the line. ADHD drugs, 0 to 1-year-olds, 310. How could a 0 to 1-year-old have ADHD? Well, I'm confused. Anyway, I could go on and on with these numbers. They're staggering. This is staggering data.
Well, Kelly, what are they using to diagnose these children? What rubric are they using? These are little babies.
I don't know, and I can't even go there, okay? Because in my mind, I've read the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association, which is called the DSM. And basically, it's their billing Bible. If that disorder is in that book, they can bill for it, for insurance purposes.
Wow.
So you read that, and it gives you symptoms, right? It gives you lists of behaviors. Basically, for ADHD, you have lists of behaviors. Raises his hand at a turn, wiggles in his seat, blurts out the answer. This is called a mental illness, all right? When in fact, it's normal. This is normal behavior of little boys.
It's just a child being compulsive.
It's being a child.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of time. Little boys have a lot of energy, right? They should. We want them to, right? So anyway, the APA has decided that behavior is ADHD, okay? And I would argue with them all day long that those are normal little boys. So what do we do? Okay, the parents, they're told that by the teacher that, I can't teach Johnny. He won't sit still. So what do? They take the kid to the doctor. And of course, the doctor, he's looking at the DSM, raises his hand at a turn. Oh, yeah, he's got ADHD. We have this drug. We're going to give him Adderall, which is the closest thing that we have to cocaine. It's methamphetamine.
Wow.
Okay? It's a stimulant. It's a Schedule II drug, the most addictive. Okay? It's like it shares the class Schedule II of fentanyl, cocaine, and heroin. Okay.
Wow, that's really crazy. So these little kids that are on Adderall in school, and sometimes their parents are on a fixed income, and sometimes they can't pick up the prescription on time. So are they actually, when they're misbehaving, are they going through like a withdrawal because their parent hasn't given them that medication back?
Well, that could be part of it. But I would argue, and here's my argument, and I write about it in my books, okay? So first of all, we're dealing with a psychiatric diagnosis that's not based in science. There's no blood test. There's no abnormality in the brain that you can get with a CAT scan or an X-ray. There's none of that, okay? Mm-hmm. It's just behaviors that you're saying this child has a mental illness because you think their behaviors are abnormal. I take offense to that right away, okay? Who are you to tell me which behavior is good and which one's bad, okay? Really. But anyway, so I got off point on that, but these diagnoses are not based in science, okay? They are just lists of behaviors, okay? Then once you get the label ADHD, right, the doctor will prescribe a treatment. Well, what is the drug treating if there's no abnormality? What? You tell me. What is it treating? Nothing. It is changing their behavior.
Right.
Well, cocaine will do that. Why don't you just give them cocaine? It'll change their behavior. See, we've it's like we've fallen for this big fraud, right? Well, we have a treatment. Well, you know what? When you look at the FDA approval, the inserts that go with these drugs, you know what they say about these drugs? The pharmaceuticals say, we don't know how they work in the brain for this diagnosis. They don't know. They have no idea how this drug works in the brain. They think it works this way, but they don't know. Okay? So you're giving your child, okay, the equivalent of cocaine when it comes to ADHD drugs, okay? The equivalent of cocaine every day, twice a day, and you wonder why they're not as happy as they were when they were little, engaged, good at school, whatever. Because what happens sometimes, and a lot actually, not just sometimes, but often, a kid will go from ADHD drugs to anti-anxiety meds to depression meds, and it's a life, cradle to grave.
So is the ADHD drug compounding all these things now that they need anxiety and all this other stuff? Or is it just pharma trying to make more money?
Of course, that's what it is. Pharma makes a lot of money off of drugs that don't treat any abnormality. This is what blows my mind. If parents were taught, listen, you take your son into the doctor and let's pretend they're honest. They're really dead on honest. And they go, Joann, your son wiggles in his chair and he talks at a turn and he raises his hand at a turn. We don't know why he does that. And, there's no abnormality in his brain, but we do have this drug. They don't know how it works really, but it'll change his behavior. Do you think you give your kid that drug?
No way.
No, because they don't tell it. They don't sell it to you that way.
No, they
sell
don't.
It to you. He's got an abnormality. He's got ADHD, a mental illness, and this drug will treat it. And it blows my mind.
And a lot of the parents that they're talking to are young parents, so they want to do what's best for their kids. So they're listening to these professionals.
Yes, but let's consider the parents now. How many of these parents are on antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds themselves? Remember, they've been told it could be hereditary. Oh my God, my kid got ADHD because I had it and it was undiagnosed. They didn't diagnose my ADHD. So my kid got my ADHD. They're sold this nonsense. Okay. They're being sold this. And, I hate to say it, but I really would love to get psychiatry in front of a congressional hearing where they have to actually tell us how they came up with these disorders, because there's certainly no science to it. It's behaviors. Well, how do you get to decide what is a right behavior and what's a wrong behavior?
Yeah, where did it come from? What panel of people decided this?
They vote on it. The American Psychiatric Association get together every 5 years, and literally by a raise of hands, they'll go, well, I think that, wiggling his chair ought to be part of that. And they go, oh, okay. And they vote it into existence. There's no science or medicine involved, right? So again, as an adult person, I find this is wrong. I think it's wrong. And I think parents need to know that their children are not suffering from an abnormality in their brain simply because they wiggle in their chair. Okay. As far as this kid, the shooter, I think that I have always argued, and AbleChild, who I write for and am on their board, they're all about informed consent, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I agree with that. Parents have a right to know everything, all the information. And I don't think they're getting all the information, which is one of the reasons why I wrote the book, the first book, Psyched Out. Because I thought when I was writing the articles at the Washington Times, it occurred to me that people don't even know this information. I didn't know it until somebody brought it to my attention. And I went, that can't be true. That can't be true. And so I started doing research, and it is true. Okay. There's no science to the diagnosis, and the drugs don't treat any known abnormality. Will they change your behavior? Yeah, they'll change your behavior. But, if you read the possible adverse, side effects, some of those behaviors, it's not good. I mean, it's scary. Most of them have hallucinations, psychosis, abnormal thinking, dreaming, suicide. Suicidality has all of the antidepressants have a black box for suicidality, meaning if you take this antidepressant, you could commit suicide because of the drug, right?
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And that's the FDA. The FDA puts the black box warning on the drugs. It's the strongest warning the FDA can put on a drug before they pull it from the market. Okay. So they need to think about this. So I say, how many parents are on these drugs and think it's okay? So when the school says, oh, little Johnny's acting out, okay, well, let's put him on Ritalin, or let's put him on Adderall, or let's put him on, one of these ADHD drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, 77 million Americans take at least one psychiatric drug.
Wow.
That's what, 1 in 4. 1 in 4.
Well, let's pause it right there. I want to come back. I want to take a small break, commercial break, and then I want to come back with our contributor, Thomas Kenny. He's the editor-in-chief of the Sunshine Journal, and I know he's going to have some input on this conversation as well. So we'll be right back.
The Warrior Shield Foundation proudly presents Warrior Weekend, a 3-day event from September 5th through September 7th at the Rosen Center in beautiful Orlando, Florida, which honors and supports the Corporal Chad Eric Oleg Schlager Foundation for PTSD, raising awareness and resources for its vital mission to help our most valuable heroes, our veterans. This powerful weekend will feature live performances by country music recording artist Ryan Weaver.
It's a long way to home, but you won't take the hard road all alone.
American Idol runner-up Bo Bice.
Tired of looking down roads, wondering what I gotta do, who I'm supposed to be. I don't wanna be anything other than free.
Christian contemporary and country artist Natasha Owens.
God and country strong, give me a cowboy who knows left from right from wrong.
Florida native and national recording artist Sean Holcomb.
You just watch your mouth. You don't know what you're talking about. There's a compass and a map if you need.
In addition to all of the musical artists performing at the event, meet John Tig Tigan and Dave Boone Benton. 2 true American heroes who stood their ground and defeated armed terrorists on September 11th, 2012, in Benghazi, Libya. Not only can you meet Tig and Boone, but you can spend the day at the range, shooting and learning from the best of the best. Another hero that you will not want to miss is Colonel Gregory Gadsden, an American actor and motivational speaker, and a retired colonel and former commander in the United States Army. Colonel Gadsden is also a bilateral, above-the-knee amputee who served in the Army for 25 years of active duty as a field artillery officer. Nowhere else will you be able to meet this all-star lineup while supporting our veterans and first responders. This is an event of a lifetime, and one you do not want to miss. Get your tickets now, online, at warriorshield.org, and support those who fought and sacrificed so much for all of us.
Welcome back to the board report. Joining us today is Kelly O'Meara and Thomas Augustus with the Sunshine Journal. How are you, everybody?
Good, Joann. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Kelly,
All
nice to
right.
meet you.
Nice to meet you. Welcome.
Wow. I was just listening off stage here, and what struck me, because I don't know too much about Adderall. I know, just being in the insurance business, I know a lot of people who are on it and used it, and they're all sorts of stuff. But it shocked me to hear you say that it's 1 degree below cocaine.
Yeah, it's the closest thing we have to cocaine, okay, methamphetamine. It's a Schedule II drug, which is the most addictive. The DEA considers Schedule II the most addictive drugs. So those ADHD drugs, they're controlled substances. And kids they'll crush them up and snort them.
Wow.
Well, yeah, and so my question to you is, restlessness is basically all these behaviors that kids have, raising their hand out of turn, talking, doing whatever they do as children because they're just restless. And why are they giving them a stimulant of such a grading?
Well, again, that's my question. I've been asking that question for 35 years. I mean, to me, the argument here has to be really clear cut. The diagnosis is not based in science. There's no science or medicine, in any of the psychiatric diagnoses. And the drugs don't treat any known abnormality in the brain. They don't treat any known abnormality. Will they change the child's behavior? Yeah, it's a stimulant. Yeah, it'll change their behavior. Is that always a good thing? Not necessarily, okay? That's what we have to understand, is that these drugs aren't always a good thing, right?
I mean, just the way you describe it, this drug is never a good thing.
Thank you. I like you already. Come on.
Well, basically what they want to do is they want robots for kids. If you're just not sitting still and listening and doing what you're told, you've got an issue.
Well, let's face it. As I said at the beginning, the mental health model that we've used for 50 years, which is diagnose and drug, it's not working. Because I'll tell you, and you want to know why I can tell you it's not working? Every year, the number of people being diagnosed with a mental illness increases. Every year, the number of people on psychiatric drugs increases. Every year, the number of suicides increases. We have a problem, okay? That model isn't working. And every time there's a shooting, you mark my words, we haven't heard it yet, but it'll happen. What happened in Minnesota, here's what you're going to hear. We need more mental health funding. And what I say is no more mental health funding. Get mental health out of the schools. Stop diagnosing our kids with fraudulent diagnoses. Okay. I sub at high schools, middle school. The kids will actually tell you what they've been diagnosed with. It blows my mind. I can't even imagine that when I was in school.
Do they do that as an excuse for their behavior, or do they do that to get in and out of activities?
Yes, and they can get out of class. They can go to the counselor's office and they can rest.
Well, they get other benefits at school too. If they have ADHD, they get pulled out of the class for testing.
Right, exactly. There's a lot of things they get, but what I'm saying is, look, I love these kids. I don't want to think that our country is built on a model that says we can only get up in the morning and take drugs in order to function. You know what I mean? If you have 77 million Americans, that's 1 in 4, taking a psychiatric drug just to function, we got a problem. This model that we're using isn't working because it's only increasing. Where does it end? Anybody can be diagnosed. Based on the DSM, anybody can be diagnosed with a mental illness because there's no science to it. There's no medicine, right?
Well, and I wanted to ask you this because Joann and I have discussed this on this program many times before. We have NGOs, nonprofit organizations that get local government funding, and they do it in a myriad of ways. They're usually education organizations, but I find that some of the education organizations are over in our hospital district, which is a taxing district, and they're getting funding. These are people that are teaching reading, but they're getting funding to do behavioral health. And I noticed that the term behavioral health and the behavioral health sciences, there's a big push for this in the school systems. Can you tell me what the goal is of the behavioral health industry in the school system? What have you realized about it?
They're going to allow them to diagnose kids. Right now, the behavioral health system in schools will allow them to test the kids, okay, if for a mental illness. Okay, we need to
based
stop.
on behavior.
Pardon me?
Based on behavior, not actual science.
Right, based
Right.
on behavior. Not please, if I could wish for anything in the world, it'd be that people understand that psychiatric diagnosing is not based in science. There's no medicine to it, there's no science. It's all observing somebody's behavior and listening to the people tell them how they feel. Okay?
Yeah, I don't want to see psychiatric evaluations in schools at all. I think that's
Well, look,
an
it just happened in
outside thing.
Illinois. In Illinois, they now mandate every kid has to have a psychiatric exam from I think it's first grade to 12th grade.
Is it a profile?
Every year. Every
It's a
year.
psychiatric profile, though, correct? They're like,
yeah.
that's how it's presented. It's really an examining evaluation.
Oh, well, it's all about we care. We care. We want to know the kids are okay. Okay? And that's how it's sold. And I say, leave the kids alone.
Mhm.
Leave the
Yeah,
kids
when
alone.
did kids ever need that? We didn't need that when we were going to school.
Never
Why
heard
would
it.
you need that? Just the school's purpose is to teach and educate, and that's it.
Mhm. Bobby Kennedy understands the SSRI, the serotonin selective reuptake inhibitor antidepressant issue very well. And so he's going to be looking into that. And I applaud that. I applaud the investigation into SSRIs, whether they are harmful, which I believe they completely are. Okay. So I applaud that we have people in the White House now who are actually going to look at some of this. And this again, let's go back to the shooter in Minnesota. I mean, the fact that we haven't heard, it's been 48 hours, the fact that we still haven't heard from his family or friends or brothers or sisters whether this kid had any kind of mental health treatment or psychiatric drugs tells me they did. Okay. They never want to tell you that information. Never. And if you're a minor, if the parents don't release that information, you're not going to get it. It's very tough to get this information, okay? And that shouldn't be. We should know now. With so many Americans being diagnosed and drugged, the American people deserve to know now immediately what the psychiatric background is on these kids and what drugs they've been prescribed. That's what I think, and I would argue for that.
Kelly, can I play this clip? Because it's clips like this that confuse us on how to respond and what people think about shooters when things like this happen. So I want to play this clip and get your commentary on it.
Sure.
And where is it? Let me throw my media in there. Looks like we lost our media. Hold on, we'll put it up in there.
Jim, let me get your reaction to that. The mayor already bringing up trans hate. It's just hours after the shooter murdered kids praying in a church, and that's what he was focusing on there.
The hate came out of the barrel of the gun that trans terrorist aimed at those children at Mass. This is something that they've been coddling people and telling them that their delusions are reality when they have a diagnosable, mental illness called gender dysphoria. It's time to quit telling them they're oppressed and the Trump administration and the church and everyone else is doing terrible things to them and giving them ideas that they need to take revenge.
And the reason I wanted to play this clip is because in schools we just went through this whole year of people talking about trans kids and the psyche at school, they're him, her, he. And now we're leading to this shooting, and he's a transgender person, but and then we don't know the medical background. So they're not telling us that. But most media is not telling us anything at all. Some media is not even mentioning that he was transgender.
Right.
And one media mentions he's a transgender and says that's the issue. But we still really don't know what the underlying issue is, if he was on medications that caused his his instability.
Okay. First of all, I agree with this gentleman, okay, as far as it is gender dysphoria. It is a delusion. I don't feel the need to join them in that delusion by calling him a woman, okay? He's a biological male as far as I'm concerned, and always will be. But I also don't want to take away his right to pretend he's a woman. If he wants to pretend he's a woman, okay, I mean, far be it from me to tell you not to pretend you're a woman. You know, I mean, I don't feel the need to change that in him, but I also don't feel like you should force me to play along with the delusion. Okay. Does that make sense? It would be like,
yeah, that's how I feel about it. Yeah.
You know, the other thing that is interesting is that there have been quite a few of these shooters of late in the last 2 to 3 years who were of, the trans movement thing. The one that comes to mind to me is Audrey Hale down in Nashville. And what's interesting is Audrey, they're still not releasing all of her records, by the way. Okay, remember there's huge court cases trying to get those records released. What we know, and here's what's interesting, and this is why I argue, this is all about mental health. It's all about mental health. Don't kid yourself. Audrey Hale was first, we were told, the public was told she didn't have any mental health. That's what we were first told. Then we find out not only did she have mental health, she had mental health services from the time she was 7 years old. Okay, 20 years she was treated at Vanderbilt University Hospital. Okay.
What for? Do you know?
Oh, a whole host of mental illnesses. Okay. Now, when she was shooting,
can I just interrupt real quick? You say a whole host of mental health illnesses, but you had mentioned a track earlier that started with the Adderall, leading to anxiety, leading to depression. Is she possibly a classic case of this type of track?
I would suggest yes. And the reason I say suggest is because they are not releasing all of her records. They are not releasing under HIPAA. They're saying, under HIPAA, we can't release her medical records. She's dead. What's the problem? Let's see them. It may help stop another shooting. Let's see what drugs you gave this girl for 20 years. Okay? That's what I want to know.
They don't want to show us that because that would expose pharma.
Of course.
Would that also produce possible liability in this case?
It could. And okay, now I'm really going to get into some deep here. Let's go. We're having a lot of fun, right? Okay. So let's talk
Unfortunately, yes.
Unfortunately, we're having an open conversation like adults, and we're going, okay, what can all this be? Why is this happening? Remember, Lindsay Clancy up in Massachusetts. This story is a big story. I've been following it since it happened. She killed her 3 kids, strangled them. And then she jumped out the 2nd floor window of her house, slit her wrist, jumped out the window, didn't kill herself. She's a paraplegic now. So Massachusetts is going to try her for murder. Here's the catch. She was a NICU nurse. She loves kids, and she loved her own kids. Okay. She had just had a little baby. And she was suffering from anxiety because she was going to have to go back to work. So she went to a psychiatrist. You know how many drugs? Between 2 psychiatrists in a 2-month period, they had her on 13 different mind-altering drugs. 13! 13!
I mean, did they counteract with each other? Or,
wait, I'll get into that. 13 mind-altering drugs. In fact, her husband went to one of the psychiatrists and he said, "You're turning her into a zombie, quote unquote." Okay?
Oh, wow.
So she kills her kids, and they go, "Oh, we gotta arrest her. We're gonna criminally charge her with murder." I'm saying, you're charging the wrong person. You ought to be charging that psychiatrist. Okay, where do they take responsibility for their care? Okay,
when do they become accountable?
Yeah, they knew they were giving her all these drugs. Okay?
Was she having a basic postpartum depression, and then I got to go back to work? I got 3 kids, and that type of thing.
Yeah, but it shouldn't
A
take
normal
13
worry,
prescriptions.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
It
That's what I'm
could have
getting
been
at.
postpartum, but in the news articles, it says it was just she had a lot of anxiety about going back to work and leaving her newborn home. Okay.
Understandable.
Yeah. And so what they do is they give her all these drugs. And so I say, and I write it in my book actually, and I say, I think we're charging the wrong people. Andrea Yates down in Texas, when she drowned her 5 kids, same thing.
Oh, I remember that story.
They drugged the hell out of her. And I'm surprised she didn't drown the whole neighborhood, to tell you the truth. They had her on 3 times the legal limit that they could put her on of a drug.
But they weren't held accountable at all.
No, never. The psychiatric, the doctors who are prescribing these drugs are never held accountable. And I would even throw in there, in the case of Lindsay Clancy in Massachusetts, I'd throw in the pharmacist too. If it was the same pharmacist filling these prescriptions, they have a duty too to look at these drugs and go, wow, 13 drugs, I mean, bells and whistles should have gone off in her case. Okay. So here's the other thing. You brought up a good point with these drugs. Okay. And as I said earlier, these drugs, the pharmaceuticals right on the inserts, we don't know how these work in the brain for this diagnosis. We don't know how they work. We think they work this way, but they don't know. Okay. So here's the catch. A lot of people are on more than one, like Lindsay Clancy. She was on like 6 at a time. Okay.
So they not only don't know how they work, they don't know
how
which ones are. Yeah, exactly. I was just about to get to. They don't know which ones are bad to take with the others, or good, or they don't know anything.
No, they don't know anything. So what they do is, what people don't understand is, Eli Lilly, who makes Prozac, or they used to, I think they actually sold that to another company. Anyway, Eli Lilly, let's use them as an example, they came out with the first SSRI antidepressant, Prozac.
What's SSRI?
Yeah, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, SSRI. And so they don't get together with the other company that makes Zoloft. I think it's Pfizer. Anyway, they don't get together and go, hey, let's test these together and see how they work. They don't do that. Okay? They do their own clinical trials for their drug, and Pfizer does their own clinical trials for their drug. And these people who are writing these prescriptions have no idea how that person is going to react when they take all these drugs. They have no idea. There's no book that says, this and this and this and this and this will treat this. It doesn't work that way.
Well, it's crazy that a person would get 13 different prescriptions for emotional anxiety. It's like, get rid of that prescription. Now try this prescription, at least if they were going to do that. But to have them on 13 different prescriptions.
Well, that was over 2 periods. So it was like 4 or 5 of this at this time, and then they switch them up, and then she'd go on 4 or 5 at this time, or 3 here. It was ridiculous.
Too many.
And the thing is what do you call that? When you don't know how a drug works, and you certainly don't know how more than one drug works together.
Experimentation is what it is.
You get the Cupid doll. It's called experimentation.
Yeah.
And are their doctors saying, did they say to Lindsay Clancy, we don't know how these drugs work together, but, we're going to give you 5 or 6 of these and see how it works out? No.
You're going to be the test dummy.
No, they said, we're going to give you this. This will treat your anxiety. And all of these drugs cause anxiety, by the way. They cause anxiety. They cause depression. The antidepressants cause depression.
Yeah, I hear that on the commercials when they're giving out prescriptions on commercials. Try this, and then on the fine print, it tells you all this. And I read it. I'm like, why would anybody take that?
Exactly. So I'm just what I try to do is make people aware, and that's why AbleChild. And I'm so pleased that you had us on. I'm happy to do this because it's about informed consent. Okay. People need to be given all the truth. And I think if they're given all the truth, and like I said to you earlier, okay, you go into the doctor, you're depressed. Oh, I'm really depressed. When you and I were growing up, it was, I'm sad or I'm bummed. I never used the word depression in my life. Okay.
Well, what's interesting about this is that depending on the semantics that you use to describe your diagnosis, you're either going to convince a person that they're messed up and need scientific help, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. You're saying this is behavioral and there's no scientific issue.
There's not.
And so, in my view, it's like this is approaching illegality.
Thank you. It's a fraud.
It's a total fraud. And secondly, you know, I've worked in the life insurance, so you go through a lot of medical history with people. I found over time, more and more people were getting prescribed. Like I had a client who had major back pain issues, so he had spasms. He had a major back pain from his spasms. He had a little bit of a back issue, and he went to the ER, and they gave him psychotropic drugs to kill pain. But that threw him out.
It doesn't.
Right. But yeah, and I'm like, well, why would they give him something so heavy that's hallucinogenic almost, just because he had a back spasm? This is what because they know it's going to react quickly to physically for him, and it's going to numb him for an hour.
Who is the number one employer in the United States now? The number one. It used to be manufacturing. You know what it is now?
It's medical.
Healthcare. Healthcare.
It is.
Without a doubt, it's medical and government.
Okay, it's healthcare. And if you look at psychiatric drugging and Medicaid is the largest provider of mental health services in the United States. Medicaid, our government. So our government, the federal government, is complicit, okay, in all of this diagnosing and drugging. And they need to stop it, okay? I mean, I hate to say it, but when my sister used to say this all the time, I'm tired of teachers catching my son being bad. I want them to catch him being good.
Good. Yeah.
Okay? Catch
They never will.
being good. Okay? Because he's not always bad all the time. And so I think about these diagnoses and I think, you know what? If you're a doctor, say, when you come in, you go, oh, I'm depressed. I think I'm depressed. Say to them, well, have you gone out and joined a gym and exercise? Because exercise is the best thing you can do for depression. Do they say that? No. They go, well, we have a drug we can give you. Okay. And now you've got another cradle to grave drug addict.
And that's why I wanted to ask you. Go ahead, Joann.
I'm saying that would change if doctors were made accountable. For example, the doctor was experimenting on his patient, and now the patient not only killed herself, but she took the lives of her children.
No, she tried to kill herself. She tried to kill herself
after
right,
she took her life.
And so the doctor's partially responsible for that because he put her in that mental state by experimenting with these drugs and not paying close attention to see what it's doing to her, because every time she went to see him, he should have seen a change in her and been concerned.
Especially after her husband came to him or her and said, "You're turning my wife into a zombie." Okay? I mean, it's the saddest case, and it goes to trial, I think, in October in Massachusetts. I'll be watching that one very carefully.
Is that a malpractice trial now?
No, it's they're trying to put her in prison for murder. And she's got a good attorney. He's using the drug argument, which I'm so pleased. I'd love to work with him on it because I've got, just bunches of information. But I'm sure that he has lots of, there's a Dr. Peter Bregan is a famous psychiatrist who he'll tell you the only time you have an abnormality in your brain is when you take these drugs. It causes an abnormality. In fact, he's right. You ever heard of tardive dyskinesia? You've seen the TV commercials, TD. You have tardive dyskinesia. Oh, that's caused from taking antidepressants and antipsychotics. Okay, so it's a real disease. Okay, you don't get rid of it. There's no cure for it. Okay, and that's caused by these drugs. So he's the first guy to ever say it.
What part of the brain has that tardive? I can't even pronounce it. But what
TD?
What is TD?
Okay, TD
made your brain deficient in as a result of taking these psychotropic
It's not deficient in anything, but Well,
once you take the drugs, it's something you've created a damage.
You've changed your naturally occurring chemicals in your brain. You've changed. Serotonin is in your brain, norepinephrine, dopamine. Okay, all these drugs are these drugs, okay, that you take, and they're in your brain. They're naturally occurring. So when you take an SSRI, a selective serotonin uptake inhibitor, okay, it goes into your brain. But here's the joke. the majority of your serotonin is in your stomach. It's not in your brain. Okay. I mean, if people really here, now let's talk about the chemical imbalance real quick. I know we're running out of time, but I'm going to get it all in here. Okay. This is my one shot. Okay. The thing is for years, people have been told they suffer from a chemical imbalance, right? You've all heard it a million times. So maybe due to a chemical imbalance. Okay. If people had really thought and their doctors were really honest, right? They would have said, really? I'm suffering from a chemical imbalance? How do you know? Can I take a test? No, there's no test to measure the chemicals in your brain, okay? That's the first clue that there's a problem with the chemical imbalance, okay? There's no way to measure the chemicals in your brain, right? So how do they know that they're out of balance? That's the question. How do you know that serotonin is out of balance, right? Then who's to decide? Who decides what the right balance is in your brain? Who gets to make that decision? Right?
That's really interesting. How do you know that?
So for 30 years, people thought, I must have I'm deficient of serotonin in my brain, right? Because they sold this stupid theory. And the pharmaceuticals jumped right on it, okay? So everybody thought, I must have a chemical imbalance. Well, 3 years ago in 2000, or 2 years ago, 23, or was it 22? I'm sorry, I don't remember which one. Dr. Joann Moncrief did a huge study and found that there's no science, zero science to support a chemical imbalance in your brain. Zero, okay? Thank God we put a stake through that stupid thing, okay? Now,
it's like a medical colloquialism. I said, you've got a chemical imbalance.
Yeah, remember Zoloft? Remember the bouncing ball, the Zoloft bouncing ball commercial? He was well, he was the chemical imbalance guy, okay? So look, you can't make this stuff up.
You're dating all of us.
You can't make this stuff up. So now
somebody did.
Yeah, exactly. And the worst part is that the whole world bought it. Okay? Mm-hmm. It's not just the United States that's all on psychiatric drugs. The whole world is.
Yeah, and I want to ask you they're supposed to trust the medical advisors and doctors. That's why it's so easy to sell it to us.
Right, exactly.
I want to talk to you about something you said in the first segment. You've got 0 to 1 year olds on Adderall or on ADHD and various things. And as they grow older, in terms of behavioral health, because you've been going into schools, you've seen a lot of this. What are the major diagnosis, the average, what are the common ones that parents need to look out for and say, hey, wait a minute, don't put that on my child. You better give me some hard-based science before we start going down this road. What do you see in the school system, and what drugs have been prescribed starting at kindergarten up into, say, middle school?
Well, again,
most.
They don't talk about it. The schools don't talk about the drugging. When I hear kids talk about it, because they've said it, they've just openly said something to me.
True.
Okay.
You've got a lot of anecdotal evidence, probably, though.
Sure. So what happens is the biggest one is ADHD for kids. Okay, kids are being diagnosed with ADHD, and they're given this, these Adderall or Ritalin, for attention deficit. Right. I would just say to the parents, if it was me and the doctor says my kid is suffering from ADHD, I go, well, where's the abnormality? Where is this abnormality? Show it to me. Would you have your kid's leg put in a cast if you didn't see a broken bone?
Right.
No, of course not. Right. So tell me, show me where the abnormality is. What test did you do that you concluded that my child is mentally ill? What test? What, he answered some questions? I mean, come on. This is what parents have to step up. They have to step up and go, no. You're not going to label my kid as mentally ill, and it's going to follow him throughout his life. Okay.
I just feel like they take advantage of these young parents, because when your kids are this young, they're they're in kindergarten, first grade, second grade. It's so easy to target those parents because they're new and they're fresh at parenting and they just want to do what's right. And they're like, oh, really? You know, wow. You know,
Yeah, well, it's kind of like the jab, frankly, the COVID jab. I mean, everybody was told, oh, you got to take the jab or you're going to die. You're all going to die. Right?
Yeah, they wanted to give it to kids who were the least likely to, you know, suffer from it.
Right. And they did. They forced kids to get the jab to go to school. Okay. And I did all the research long before that. I mean, because I was a reporter, so I did a piece on AIDS, and Fauci was all over AIDS and the AZT drug. So I knew all about Fauci. There was no way I was going to take that shot after knowing Fauci was involved. Okay. But again, I'm the type of person that I research everything. Okay. Normal people don't do that. Okay. They just go, oh, my government says I'm going to die if I don't get this shot. Right. And now we know that it wasn't effective and it didn't stop anybody from getting COVID. Woo! Do you still trust the doctors?
Well, you know, it's interesting about the last two, the Nashville shooter and this one. They both went to that school, their school.
Yes, yes.
This Robin Westham, he's
Robert.
Sorry. I hear him as Robin or Robert. Anyway, Robert.
Yeah.
His mother taught there, or was there until 20.
She was a secretary, yeah.
Yeah, and my understanding that I've seen is that he was on different mental health prescriptions during his time in high school and was trying to come out and live his life like he said he was in his manifesto.
Where did you get that? Did he say that?
You know, you sit on X for long enough and you learn a lot.
I heard
that he was going that direction, and so
what he said, unfortunately, this is a quote, unfortunately, due to my depression, anger, and twisted mind, I want to fulfill the final act that has been in my back of my head for years. And then here's what's interesting, and this is what tells me this kid was on some sort of psychiatric care. Okay? He says in January 2018, a police officer in Eagan, Minnesota, was dispatched to the family's home over a mental health issue, according to a heavily redacted police report. The officer notes in the report that he assisted Mendota Heights with a welfare check on a juvenile. That tells me this kid had some mental health issues, okay? And then it says this was the second time that the cops were out there for a mental health check, okay? So somebody, the juvenile in that house, and there weren't any other juveniles in the house that I could think of, his siblings were much older than him, okay?
He had a sister, I think.
And a brother, I think. There's 3 kids. So that's why I'm concluding, I believe that we're going to find out that he had a mental health history here. And all I want to know then is, what drugs did they give you? Okay. And when did you start taking these drugs? Right.
Yeah. Cause I was listening to the Megyn Kelly show and she read part of a manifesto where he was upset and he was so deep in the trance, but he wanted to untrans, but it was kind of too late. I'm not verbatim for what she said. It was too late to go back. So then he was like, don't ever do this to yourself, something to that effect. So just hearing that from Megyn Kelly reading from his manifesto, that portion of it, I was like, something mentally was going on with this person. And it just led me to remember how many kids this past year were being transed and mentally brainwashed. And he used that word in there. I brainwashed myself, into believing this. And now I can't go back. And so it just made me concerned because I was like, wow, what has been happening to all of our kids right now?
Well, don't you find it interesting that the American Psychiatric Association, have you ever heard the president of the American Psychiatric Association go on TV and say, these people who think they're men and who think they're women, they're suffering from gender dysphoria.
No, they're not doing that anymore.
No, they're not doing that. The American Psychiatric Association isn't doing that. How come? Why?
No, they're not. Instead, they're
$50,000 to
affirming it.
$100,000 of elective surgery.
Exactly.
They have lifelong patients that
Yes.
need medication for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, dirty rats. So again, I'm not making light of any of this, okay? I mean, again, I don't feel the need to change anybody's, if they think they're a man or if they think they're a woman, go for it. I'm glad for you, okay? But I don't want to join you in the delusion. Just let's keep it straight. You can be whatever you want, but I don't need to join you, okay?
You're not
It's
going
like
to suspend biology.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I went to 8th grade, science. So the other thing is I wanted to raise real quick because I saw you guys are doing a veterans thing. You know, we have a bad suicide problem in the military, especially with veterans. And it goes up every year, the rate of suicide. And I think it's 1 in 22 now, or 22 out of 100. The point is, the problem is the VA, they drug our veterans so bad, okay? This is the thing. This
To
is
treat
what we-
PTSD?
Yeah. PTSD, they give them drugs, okay? You got to stop. You wonder why. It says, when you give them these drugs, it says, causes suicidality. Hello?
Suicide ideations.
Yeah,
it
you have
says
to
it.
medicate the heart, the mind, and the soul.
Yeah, but they're
Not
giving them
medicate, but I mean,
drugs.
that's what you have to treat, the heart, mind, and soul.
You know what happened? Let's end it with this, okay? And I think this is really a good way to wrap it up. For years, people could talk to each other, and if you had a problem, you could call your sister, your buddy, your best friend, whatever, and go, man, I'm feeling really down. You know, I had this happen, this happened, this happened. And you'd listen, right? And you'd talk. Then we got these pills. We start giving pills. Here, take this. This will make you feel better. So now we don't have to have compassion. We got a pill. Nobody's compassionate anymore. They don't listen to each other anymore, okay? Because we got a pill to take. And that's so sad to me, you know? With
That
our
pill is an expression of some sort of knowledge that makes you feel smart or intelligent about your quote problem, but actually it just isolates you further away from those relational connections that'll help you through everything.
Yes. And we need each other. You know, I mean, seriously, I think we need to start thinking about this on a failed mental health model. We got to look at this model and go, this isn't working. What else can we do? Do we need to just kind of go back to basics with this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get mental health out of our life? I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the answer
Well,
is.
and it's funny about the kids with the Adderall, the ADHD, the ADD being that primary thing, that restlessness. Like last year, we had a discovery in Indian River and a lot of counties in the state of Florida that kids weren't getting their required recess, where they go out and interact and they go play and they wear themselves out essentially for a half hour, 20 minutes a day or whatever it was the requirement was, and they weren't getting it. They weren't getting 5 days of that. They were getting
they have
2, 1. And so these kids are sitting in there going, you know, they're just restless bundle of nerves, and they need to go and throw out and play some kickball and do whatever.
Well, yeah, exactly. When we were kids, we had recess twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon.
Yeah, you'd start. You
And
had to get there at 7:30 to play for a half hour.
We did. We ran like we were crazy.
And then at 8 you were in, and then at noon you ate lunch, and then you played for another half hour. Then you had PE.
And we were happy.
Great back then.
We were happy. We were happy.
Happy and sweaty. Happy and sweaty.
Well adjusted.
Right.
We didn't know anything, but we were well adjusted.
Well, Kelly, I want to thank you so much for joining us here at the Board Report. It really has been a true pleasure to hear all that you've been able to do and the advocacy you're doing for families and children.
Well, I would ask you to just mention AbleChild.org. If people have any questions, especially parents who are curious about, you know, their kids being told they need to be on drugs, go to AbleChild.org and read the articles we put up every week and sign
And
up.
give us the name of your book again, too.
My book it's just out 2 weeks ago, just came out. It's called Still Psyched Out, and Nobody's Getting Better.
And your original was Psyched Out.
Yes, my original book was Psyched Out. So after 20 years, I wrote it. I updated all the data in it and wrote a couple new chapters. And it's very sad. As I said, I mean, my mantra is you know, things aren't getting better. We keep spending hundreds of billions of dollars every year on mental health, and people are just getting sicker. They're just getting more drugged. Nobody's getting better. And that's a problem. That's a problem that we need to address.
All right. Well, thank you, Kelly. Thank you so much. And
Thank
Thomas, thank you for joining us again. He is our
Thank you,
regular
Joann.
contributor.
Thank you,
And
Thomas.
you guys have a great evening. All right. Thank you for joining us here at the Board Report. And thank you for supporting the Board Report, brought to you by Indian River Connections. Remember to hit the like, share, and subscribe tab to get notified when the Board Report goes live. And remember that the Board Report goes live every Friday at 7 p.m. And visit IndianRiverConnections.com to stay informed on the latest topic. Also visit IndianRiverConnections.com to visit our network of podcasters. And thank you again, and have a great weekend.
Indian River Connections brings you the first source you can watch for truth on board decisions in Indian River County. The Board Report, where taxpayers and policymakers intersect. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite platform to get notified when we go live on Fridays at 7 p.m. Visit IndianRiverConnections.com for more. Sponsored by Gus Curran's House of Champions.